Is it too late for this? If so, too bad. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chandler, and I typically read smutty little books here on this channel, but as part of my 2024 resolutions this year, I am branching out. I'm still a stupid little bitch, but I am expanding my horizons. Today that means talking to you about all of the winners of the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards, and it also means telling you which I think are worth your time and which I think are total shit time wasters. I'm gonna give you my unfiltered thoughts as I run through these books in the order in which they appear on the Goodreads website. Let's get into it, shall we? Now, I'm very much a save the best for last kind of girl, so it really pains me to start off with what I believe is the best book that won the Goodreads Choice Awards this year. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang is a genre-bending fiction book that at times feels literary, other times feels like a little bit of a psychological thriller, and pretty much always feels like it's written by someone with a vendetta. Now, if you, like me, are someone who peruses the Goodreads reviews for a book before actually picking it up, you might notice that a lot of people seem to be hung up on the fact that the author might have used this book to air her grievances with the publishing industry and the kind of accompanying social media landscape that goes along with it. And look, you're probably right about her intent, but I don't think you're right about that being wrong. I think books are at their best when they are personal. I don't want to pick a book up, fiction or nonfiction, that doesn't feel like it is close to the author. I like when authors, for lack of a better phrase, put their whole puss into it. R.F. Kuang really did that here. I laughed, I didn't cry, I felt dread, I reflected on past mistakes. In short, it was a roller coaster that I personally believe everyone needs to ride. I guess I should probably tell you what the book is about though to actually convince you of that. So this book is about our narrator June, who isn't pleased with her lot in life. She's a white lady with a college education who feels like she is owed success because she works hard and she puts her all into her writing. She just can't seem to get this success when other rising stars that she went to university with are getting all the buzz. But that perceived wrong by June can be righted when an acquaintance of hers, Athena, dies while she is at her apartment. It wouldn't be wrong for June to take Athena's manuscript and pass it off as her own. She's simply helping it see the light of day. But what starts as a way to kickstart June's career has June descending on a path of, well, madness might be too strong of a word, but definitely paranoia and poor decisions. This is a book that got a lot of buzz when it first came out, and it will continue to rack up awards as time goes on. Usually that has me uninterested in picking up a book, since usually award winners tend to pander to an audience that likes to see women suffer in historical fiction. But this book is decidedly not that, and deserves all the hype it gets. I gave this book 5 stars. Remember a second ago when I briefly opined on how much I hate women suffering in historical fiction? Wayward by Amelia Hart racked up not 1, but 2 Goodreads Choice Awards for a deeply pedestrian historical fiction book about 3 different women going through, sadly, very much imaginable suffering. Those wins, by the way, are for historical fiction and debut novel. The women in this book are dealing with hideously shitty men in 1942, 1619, and 2019. 1942, we've got a girl living in a mansion, craving an education, and instead getting repeatedly assaulted. And then in 2019, we've got a woman trying to escape her abusive ex, and in 1619, we've got a chick on trial for, you guessed it, witchcraft. The thing that ties these 3 women together is shared genetics, of course, but also this delightful, vague, man-quashing magic. When I picked this book up, I won't lie, I knew that I would not enjoy it. I avoid historical fiction like the plague because the only role that women seem to have in it is to suffer. And I don't know, man, it's 2024. I want to read about women triumphing, and by triumphing, I mean having hot consensual sex. When reading this book, I will say I was more irritated than usual, and I really couldn't put my finger on why. Until, of course, I perused the Goodreads review section for this book. Thank God for Goodreads reviews, genuinely, they saved my life. And one reviewer, Emily, put into words what I couldn't. Magical realism to me really defeated any empowering undertone because I just kept thinking, all this stuff happens but to people who can't control birds and insects, so it kind of felt like the whole idea of the empowering vengeance and freedom was just a fairy tale. Real abused women don't get saved and protected by magical elements. And she's totally right. What sort of message am I supposed to be taking away from this? Because that's ultimately what these books are made for. To give you a passing feeling of, wow, women are so strong, and then to put it back on the shelf and then ultimately forget that you ever read it. I mean, I urge you to read literally any other book about a woman, one that perhaps gives women autonomy, where she gets whatever she wants and deserves. This got a well-deserved 1 star for me, a half star for each of the categories it was nominated in, and 1, I suppose. All right, cha-chaing into the next category where the winner is just so deeply unserious. Mystery thriller this year had some really strong contenders, really strong nominees, and while this video doesn't serve to tell you like which books deserve to win in their respective categories, I do want to note that my personal winner for this category this year would be None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I found it was a real gem. The real winner is The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden, which is a follow-up to the wildly successful book, The Housemaid. We're back once again with our girl Millie, who is a felon who's been released from prison and is forever having a hard time finding steady work because of her record. Got a reputation for working kind of under the table as a housemaid for very rich people with secrets. And this time, she's working as a housemaid under the table for very rich people with secrets. Like other reviewers, I will point out that this book is very similar to the first book, though the ending is almost completely different and completely opposite, so I won't spoil it for you. It kind of is like like gas station sushi. You know exactly what to expect. It's not good, but it will probably hit the spot if you are desperate for a cheap thrill. Again, I'm not really here to speculate why each book won in its respective category. I'm guessing accessibility was probably the case here. This book is available with a Kindle Unlimited subscription, and if you have one, this book is short enough that you probably won't regret the time that you're wasting on reading it. So I gave this gas station sushi 3 stars. Are you there, God? It's me, Chandler, begging this to be the last time that I ever have to speak about Happy Place by Emily Henry. It is no secret that I'm a romance lover, and I don't shut up about it, which is clear because I think I've mentioned it already about 3 times in this video. I want to shut up about this book because it was so deeply unsatisfying, unromantic, and unsexy to me, and not in a way that is particularly fun to like dunk on. Happy Place is about 2 deeply unhappy people who are allegedly perfect for each other, but at the moment are broken up. And this proves challenging when they go on a sort of like friend vacation with some people that they like went to college with, mutual friends of theirs. They haven't really told anyone that they are broken up, as that would be too easy. They instead decide that they are going to pretend to still be in a relationship to make things easier. And why do that, you might ask? Because these 2 have never had a serious, real conversation in their lives, and I am convinced of it. You know, I am someone who believes love conquers most. Not all, and in this case, the only thing that love conquered was our heroine's desires to continue on with her life goals. I cannot stand when people who were allegedly in love for 8 years don't tell each other anything about their respective like family lives. There are some pretty big family secrets that these 2 are keeping from each other that are things that I honestly wouldn't hesitate to tell a mere acquaintance, let alone someone I'm in love with. I also don't appreciate when the majority of the book is spent with people who mean very little to the actual story, like the bland ass friends in this one. What I can't abide by is when the 2 love interests have what feels like diametrically opposed life goals and career aspirations. These people in this book are incompatible, and having the heroine throw her life dream of being a doctor away by giving us some sort of like throwaway line about how her parents are the ones that really encouraged her to go to med school and she really wanted to impress them. She really dreams of like, I don't know, getting her hands dirty with pottery. Not for me. There are definitely people watching this with tomatoes, you know, to throw. They definitely have things to say that would contradict my very correct opinions, but I am okay with that. I gave this book 2 stars, and I firmly believe that there are some real gems, some real bangers in this nominee list. I read all 20 of them, if you can believe it. And I'll leave a link in the description to the video where I talk about all of the books, rank them, rate them, tell you what I believe the winner should be. So if you really want a good romance, I would recommend checking out that video and not picking up this one. Moving on. A newly crafted category that many believe was created for this one book, the winner of this award, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which took the world by storm and then promptly let its audience down with the Rush sequel, but we won't get into that here. Those people are probably right about this category being created specifically for this book, because despite the popularity of this kind of growing subgenre of romance, the vote spread between the winner and the runner-up of this category is absolutely absurd, and you will not see a spread this big anywhere else in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I didn't check to confirm that, but I believe it, okay? And it's almost as absurd as this book. We've got our good bitch Violet, who is bookish and a small girl who never expected to be recruited to the dragon riding squadron where the military state that she lives in. Now we read with rapt attention as this fish out of water shocks us, not with her unexpected strength, but with her cunning and her cutthroat behavior. I really hate sounding like I am not like other girls when I critique books, right? I am just like other girls, and I crave a good mountain-shaking fantasy as much as the next, but this one is just not good. The world building is abysmal, and the excuse that you're not supposed to know much because there's a cliffhanger and you'll find out more in book 2, it's lazy writing. Violet is a very hard to root for main character. I don't feel like she has enough going for her to make her feel realistic, and her love interest, while perfectly fine, is not one that is worth remembering except for the fact that his name is Xaden, and that's sadly and scarily probably a name that people are going to take and run with and use for their own child. It's not the worst book I've ever read, I will begrudgingly admit that, but I do regret reading it more than once this past year. I don't recommend it, but if you are genuinely so hard up for some good fantasy romance after reading Akamath, this might be worth a try. Certainly the sex scene spans like multiple chapters, so might scratch some sort of itch that you might be having. Let's talk about fantasy without the romance, shall we? Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo is the second book in the Alex Stern series. It feels like a weird winner for a Goodreads Choice Awards, just honestly, right off the bat. It is certainly fantasy, and I don't doubt the popularity of this series, but there were some incredibly strong nominees this year, and while I didn't read any of them, I don't believe, I kind of don't think this one deserved to win. Hellbent follows the story of Alex Stern, who is a part of a magical secret society at Yale. It acts as a sort of magical police over the other secret societies at Yale and their sort of magical occult practices. Now, in the last book, Alex had made it her mission to find out what happened to her mentor and save him from whatever sort of like liminal space that he is occupying. And in this book, she does the same exact thing, which is my one issue with this book that I actually did enjoy. Leigh Bardugo is a fantastic writer, and only she could get me to give a book like this 4 stars. It's just so damn repetitive. The continuation of the Save Darlington plotline really felt like it went on too long, and the things ways that Alex and the motley crew that she sort of assembles do to try to save him also felt very repetitive. It's like we're going to the same places over and over again, we're doing the same things over and over again with not really different results. There are a few new and interesting things definitely introduced in this book, and I think that's especially why I was getting increasingly frustrated. It's like, you're showing us new places, new ideas, new things, new people. Why aren't we doing new things with those elements? Don't get me wrong, I also want to save the weird hottie who might be possessed by a demon, but I just don't feel like this book moved the greater plotline forward. Again, maybe I'm just salty that Lee didn't make the Barbies kiss often enough in this book, but it just wasn't my fave. And again, it's a good book, it's worth picking up if you already enjoy Ninth House and you want to read the continuation of the series, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend people pick up Ninth House just so they can get to this book. It's not like it's this incredible sophomore novel that you're going to just be like blown away by. It's fine, it's 4 stars, but I actually would really like to read maybe some of the other nominees in this category to see, you know, what sort of fantasy was doing good this year, because this was just kind of a boring pick. Maybe the most perplexing win of all of them is in the science fiction category. And I say this as a lover of TJ Klune books. I don't want to say that I was like, you know, not like other girls and the first there, but I was, I think, one of the first people to talk about Wolfsong on YouTube. And as someone who admittedly didn't read any of the other books in this category, I just can't see how this particular book beat out the other nominees in this category, especially considering like the authors that penned books for this category this year. This one is about a human named Vic who lives with an android father who like adopted him, raised him from infancy, whatever, and he winds up having to rescue said father with the help of some of his household robots, and this robot that he is like low-key in love with that he also kind of rescued, Hap. So Hap and the other sort of like household robots, Vic, they're all gonna be like this little gang, and they're gonna go and find daddy and kind of like see what's up and, you know, save him from the evils. And along the way, Vic learns more about the society that he has been raised apart from, and we as readers think are supposed to learn more about like the human condition and like true love, platonic love, and romantic love, and all loves, okay? I guess you could add cynic to my list of character traits because this book just did not charm me in the way that I feel like it was supposed to. This one, I believe, is a retelling of Pinocchio, and I just kind of don't think that story really needs a retelling. I'm just not into the corniness of this one. That obviously comes down to personal preference. I just feel like the execution of science fiction book with the corniness of TJ Klune's writing didn't really work. It wasn't really something that I thought meshed well together. And I'm not saying that science fiction isn't the medium necessarily for that writing style. I mean, some people are going to eat the shit up, and clearly a lot of people did. You could say it's innovative, you know, you're probably right. It's just, it's not for me, right? I'm not someone who enjoys like cozy fantasy books or books that feel like this one. So for me, it was just a 2-star. All right, I know that a video title and a video premise are law, and sadly, I'm about to break that law. Officer, lock me the hell up. I didn't finish Holly by Stephen King. I dutifully plugged in my AirPods and prepared to be put to sleep by all the character introductions. I just didn't expect to be put to sleep quite so soon. I want to put out there that I didn't DNF this book because of the subject matter. I know that COVID is something that is like very present in this book, and that a lot of conservatives don't like it because it's like pushing an agenda. Okay, I don't feel that way personally. I just don't like this man's writing, plain and simple. I also kind of hate that books in series can be nominated, to be honest, for these awards. I feel like I felt that way about Hellbent, and I kind of feel that way about this book as well. Not that these books don't have any merit or anything, but I feel like it makes my job sort of annoying. I also believe that these awards have greater benefit for authors who perhaps have been starting a new series and are trying to like get that series off the ground and sort of get people to read it and be interested in it. And also I feel like it helps new authors perhaps a little bit more than established authors who have like a million fucking books. But hey, if you are in the market for a detective story about some chick named Holly taking out evil old people who might be kidnappers, this might be for you. Moving on. To the darling of Bookstagram for the past whoever knows how many months, Divine Rivals, or as I like to call it, Disgruntled Workplace Acquaintances. This book is unique in that it promises you this like star-crossed YA fantasy and is instead a story loosely based on World War I, where we've got kids lugging around typewriters to tell stories from the front. Our delightfully downtrodden heroine in this book is named Iris, who wears too tight shoes, and she doesn't have the fancy education of her peers in this newspaper business, so she's having to like fight tooth and nail to get this promotion that she really desires. But she does have a magical typewriter and a brother who's missing in action, so, you know, points for her. Our dark-haired hunk Roman is trying to win Iris's promotion for himself and is the recipient of Iris's magical typewriter's letters that Iris thinks are being sent to her brother. The story definitely evolves as the book carries on, with both characters getting closer to the war and closer to learning the secrets of why the war started in the first place. This book was kind of like The Housemaid Secret in that it is available on KU and it's fine for what it is, but not what I would consider to be award-winning material. Mostly because this book lets the reader down on what it promises. It's supposed to be this sort of like rivals to lovers thing, but that lasts all of 5 seconds. Also because the author decided the characters needed to be wed to bone down, and especially because the fantasy world building here is flimsier than typewriter paper. Now, I do think this is another one that if you buy into the hype, I think you might be able to convince yourself that you like it. So if you run around like in bookish spaces on the internet, which you probably do if you're watching this video, I guess pick it up. Just know that I personally will not be picking up the sequel. Young adult fiction and me have been like oil and water for a while here. I am getting up there in years, and so I didn't really go into reading the winner for this year's Goodreads Choice Awards with a lot of excitement. Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, okay? Sure, I love Ali Hazelwood's like fanficky adult romances, but I just didn't put much faith in her holding my attention with a book that would not feature such fun scenes as girl tripping over feet in science lab and man putting whole boob into mouth. I am pretty pleased to report that Check and Mate was maybe one of Ali Hazelwood's best books and is a very fantastic, very solid YA debut. It follows the Queen's Gambit sort of like sexification of chess thing and gives us our heroine Mallory, who is a chess prodigy, shall we say. She learns chess from her father, but she ends up hanging up the old board and pieces when her dad, I guess, leaves home and kind of like leaves behind his family. Now Mallory, 18, is graduated and is trying to figure out a way to take care of her little sisters and her mom, who is dealing with a chronic illness. Mallory works at a garage to kind of make ends meet until she is unfortunately fired from her job and is approached by someone who kind of heard of Mallory and knows her chess playing skills and is like, hey, I want to give you money to play chess. I mean, that's kind of a dream situation, is it not? A series of events unfold though, and Mallory learns more about herself as she plays chess. She also comes into contact with a hottie McHot guy named Nolan, who is neither intimidated nor misogynistic, but is instead impressed and turned on by our girl's intelligence, which we love to see, especially kind of in a YA romance modeling, you know, healthy relationships. Mallory realizes throughout the course of the story, obviously, that she can have nice things and that she doesn't have to be parentified. Her mom kind of pushes back on that at the end of the book, which I really appreciated. Really well balanced and really well thought out, and I think it does serve as sort of a contrast to Ali Hazelwood's other books, in that it doesn't have that like cornball aspect. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that. I love a good cheese flavored corn snack as much as the next gal. This book, like I said, is just really grounded in reality, and I think getting to see Mallory's growth over the story is kind of in contrast to some of Ali's other books. I mean, heroines in those books do undergo some growth, but I think that is the focus of a YA book typically, is seeing characters really grow. It's something that I honestly kind of miss about YA when I read an adult romance, you know? Like, the characters are a little more established and like, or maybe they have to figure out like their career or whatever, but it's just not to the same extent that it is in a YA book. I'm gonna stop waxing poetic. I'm very happy that this book won. I'm sure there are other very solid picks in this category. There's so much great YA fiction being published these days. I'm really happy this one won, and you should check it out. Now let's move on to uncharted, or rather unrated territory, right? The next 4 categories are all nonfiction books, and I personally do not rate my nonfiction. Typically read, if I'm going to read nonfiction, memoirs, and I don't really like to rate other people's life experiences, so I refrain rating, although I understand why people do. From the way I talk about these books, you should still be able to get a very good idea of how I feel about them and whether or not you should pick them up, okay? First up to bat is the nonfiction winner, Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. I listened to the audiobook for this one, and I have to say that I really appreciated the narrator and the way that he made this book come to life, because the way that this book was written, frankly, was just too dry for my taste. This is actually the kind of nonfiction book that I would be apt to pick up on my own. I'm not typically a nonfiction girly, but had it not been for this video, I think I probably would have DNF'd this book. It talks from all angles about poverty in America, like the title suggests, and it points out all of the contributing factors that keep the poorest in America at the socioeconomic status that they're at. It's unflinching, but in my opinion, relies more on statistics than personal stories to sort of reiterate the points that our author is trying to make, which did leave me bored at times. At the beginning of the story, and a few times kind of throughout the course of the story, we do get these personal anecdotes or notes from the author about these poor Americans that he has interviewed to try to get some like real life perspective. And I will say that I found this to be particularly enlightening and helped to prove some of the points he was trying to illustrate. They were few and far between, and it's not that I think that we need to have personal anecdotes in a book like this to give us some sort of like human empathy. I mean, I think we should have empathy based on kind of the information we're being provided. I just really do think that it helps to kind of break up some of the sort of more heavy statistics side of the book and make it feel a little bit more real, for lack of a better word. Also, this might be a hot take, but I personally think that a lot of what is present in this book is probably not new information for most Americans, especially as I feel like the plight of a lot of Americans is being more publicized recently, especially kind of with the way the economy is right now. Personally think for that reason that this one might be a skip for me and maybe for you as well. All right, that last one was very straightforward for me, and this next one is not going to be, so bear with me. The Woman in Me won the category for memoir and autobiography. Woman in Me is a memoir, at least partially written or contributed to by Britney Spears. It recounts the moments in her life, both private and public, and kind of shines a new light on her innermost thoughts that we've never really gotten to hear before because of the conservatorship that she was under until very recently. When reading this and attempting to gather my thoughts, I will say my feelings have been so all over the place. I actually attempted to read this over on my vlog channel and kind of kind of talk about it, and I spent 3 clips trying to like cobble together my thoughts. It was just very hard because on the one hand, I am really glad that Brittany was able to share her thoughts with us in a way that she curated herself, right? She wanted to put this out there in the way that she did, and it's been very clear from her social media posts that she has felt silenced. She is really averse, obviously, to misinformation about her life. She wanted to kind of set the record straight, which I thought was really, really great, and I think made a lot of sense. But on the other hand, I personally wanted more from this. The memoir isn't particularly long, and I think I would have liked more detail and time spent on like different phases of her life. Moving so quickly from, I think, like one torment to the other doesn't really give the horror of some of the aspects of her life, I guess, lack of a better word, much time to sink in and to feel impactful. Not that someone's life is really supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be like fodder for us. I did just want more detail, and I selfishly wanted to learn a little bit more about each phase of her life that she was kind of going through. And you know, this could be very well the way that Brittany thinks about the events of her life, but as a reading experience, I feel like it just kind of felt like a little bit of a like fleshed out Wikipedia page rather than the real events and kind of how they happened in her life. Now, I did really appreciate how authentic the voice was here, and the chaos of the narrative definitely felt like how Brittany tends to communicate with the public, but I don't think that this is the masterpiece that a lot of people were making it out to be when it first came out, which I hate to say, but I did enjoy this, and I think as a part of pop culture history, this is pretty fantastic, and I think this is something that a lot of people could gain something from. I think there's a lot of just speculation, misinformation, etc. about Brittany, and I think that this would maybe quell a lot of people's endless curiosity. Moving on to the section that I think we should rename No One Asked, but I Guess Now We Care, History and Biography. The winner this year was The Wager by David Grann, which uses first-hand accounts, diary entries, and other fun tidbits to tell the very real and very wild story of a ship that was used in the war between England and Spain in 1742. The ship wrecked, and the result was absolutely wild and made for a story that was unbelievably interesting. When I say I never would have picked this book up on my own accord, I mean it, but somehow by the end, I was wondering why I don't pick up things like this more often. I was a history major in college, for some context, which makes me very appreciative of the past, but also leaves me particularly irritated when I read historical fiction. I just never consider picking books up like this because I kind of lump them in with historical fiction, but I feel like I should have known that the truth is always stranger than fiction, and that real life accounts are typically much more interesting than fictionalized versions of the past. So this book was incredibly well done, and I think it's the kind of thing that even history haters might enjoy. I mean, I do think just objectively the story is very interesting. If you are someone who hesitates to pick up stuff like this, you should pick this one up. It was very good. And then we get to the last category, humor, which I think is a great place to leave this video off with. Now, initially I kind of wrinkled my nose a little bit at an autobiography winning the humor category, and after reading it, I do still kind of feel that way because I don't think that this book is particularly funny, certainly not funny enough to warrant an award for being funny. But as an autobiography, I think that Being Henry by Henry Winkler is spectacularly well done, insightful, and couldn't be more different than Brittany's memoir. And I don't say that as an insult, I just mean this feels incredibly cohesive with a candor that I find that I don't often get when I read celebrity memoirs. Henry Winkler, I won't lie, is someone that I literally never think about unless I'm watching something that he's in, like Arrested Development or Barry, and I didn't really care to learn more about his life. I definitely would not have picked this up on my own, but I was genuinely surprised to see how interesting the peek behind the curtain was. You get to see this passionate young guy fall in love and get cast in the role of a lifetime as the Fonz, and then he has to find a way to break out of this typecast for a good portion of his adult life, and then ultimately finding fulfillment in this industry that is just a constant battle from what it sounds like. And Henry is so reflective along the way, which I found unexpectedly delightful. He continuously laments the way that he places so much of his self-worth on being successful, and how this really affects the other people in his life. He actually asks his wife to write bits of his autobiography and kind of share her side of the story, and she narrates those pieces in the audiobook, which I found really charming. And by the time the book was over, I really had an appreciation for him, not only as an actor, but as a human being. And I think this book is actually one that would be interesting to a lot of people, especially who have questions like the one that I saw on TikTok recently. You know, outside of these big stars that seem to be cast in like multiple blockbuster award-winning movies like Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, those kinds of people, what does life look like for people that do have success or, you know, make a big break in one role and then go years without being cast? What does that look like? This book really answers that with a lot of fun along the way. As we've reached the end of the road, I hope that you had a little bit of fun along the way too, that you have been able to add a new book to your TBR or maybe taken one off of your TBR based on my bitching. I had a really good time exploring genres that I don't typically read from, and it has gotten me interested in thinking about maybe reading from other genres in the future, and also maybe reading from an unfamiliar genre for the Goodreads Choice Awards next year. You know, I do my yearly romance video, I read all the nominees, but maybe I'll do like fantasy next year, or I don't know, biographies. Thanks for watching this. I love y'all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.